All right, well, it looks like we've hit 2 o'clock here, at least 2 o'clock Eastern time. And welcome to everybody from around the world in institutions. We're really glad to have you here in our session on innovations in student-facing learning analytics, where we will talk about My Learning Analytics. My name is Jennifer Love. I am a business systems analyst at the University of Michigan in the IT Teaching and Learning Department. And I'm here with Stephanie Teasley.
Yes, hi, I'm Stephanie Teasley. I'm a faculty member in the School of Information at the University of Michigan.
All right, we're going to talk about My Learning Analytics today. As we go through the presentation, we're going to do some slides. We're going to do a demo of the tool itself, and feel free to pop questions in the chat. We will say, if you were with us about a month ago, we were privileged to give this presentation on the 24th at a Unizin meeting last month. And so this is essentially going to be the same presentation. So if you've already seen it and you want to pop off to another session, we won't be at all insulted. But if you'd like to stay and have other questions and learn more about MyLA, we're happy to have you. So I'm going to go ahead and get us started. All right, so Stephanie, do you want to start off with the slides here?
Yeah, we're here today to tell you about My Learning Analytics, otherwise known to us as MyLA for short, which is a student-facing dashboard that we designed here at Michigan. As you probably know, there is no student-facing dashboard in Canvas. At the time when we started this project, we knew that Canvas was working on an instructor dashboard, which has indeed rolled out, but many of the commercial LMS out there now have student-facing dashboards, even though the research literature on those dashboards is not really very detailed about what works and what doesn't work. And a couple of recent articles have really outlined some major problems with the design, the development, and the measurement of the impact of dashboards. So we decided to build our own and study it ourselves. And if you were in the keynote, this keynote speaker talked about 4 ways or 4 areas you could improve student learning: access, learning effectiveness, instructional effectiveness, and satisfaction. And I would say we developed this dashboard primarily with an eye toward learning effectiveness, but also hopefully getting student satisfaction in there, because the more effective they are as learners, the better, the happier they're going to be about their educational experience. And so we really wanted to provide students with actionable information, things that views that really suggested to them things that they needed to do. Next slide. So yes, as I have already mentioned, dashboard studies right now are not really very informative, and they've shown mostly that we don't really know. Our peer comparison's helpful. So most dashboards will show the student how they're doing compared to the peers in the class or historical norms in the class and so forth. There isn't really a lot of good research on whether students can interpret the visualizations they see, what's their data literacy for visualizations. And also there's not really a lot of good evidence that students even know what to do with the information that's presented in these dashboards. So these are some of the studies, some of the questions that we have and are investigating, and some of the problems that we hope to help solve. So the problems that have been identified in the research literature, primarily a big one for me, and I think it would be for our keynote speaker as well, is there's really, it's missing underlying learning theory. What are these dashboards supposed to be doing? How are they tapping into what we know about learning? They're very often not doing usability testing. Often they just put them up, but they don't study how has using them affected people, or who, and what kinds of courses or what kinds of activities. And the effects of performance comparison have not very systematically been looked at. Typically, also, designs are one size fits all. There's just a standard dashboard view, and there's very little agency for the student to customize that dashboard as they would see fit. And certainly in the research world, the other issue is they're often very boutique dashboards that have been developed by some researchers, maybe even runs on a computer under somebody's desk, and they're not necessarily designed to scale. So what we wanted to do was address some of these problems. And I thought the best way to do this is to have a team of people with different kinds of expertise. So myself and one of my faculty colleagues from the School of Information, together with a faculty member from the School of Education. So I've been studying learning for a long time. My colleague, Matt Kay, is an expert in data visualization. And my sadly now deceased colleague from the School of Education, Stuart Karabinick, has been studying learning and motivation, self-regulated learning for his whole career. We were careful. We wanted to involve the student perspective. And so there are a number of graduate and undergraduate students who've worked on these projects, both in the research end of it, but also there have been students in the ITS where Jennifer is. And it's just been a great thrill to be able to work with the team, the teaching and learning team, to be the system developers. So what we were developing actually could look forward to scaling and worked, we knew would draw data that was available to us in the system. We also have a shout out to some developers at the University of British Columbia who saw an early version of this and said, hey, I have an idea. And they kind of ran with it. And it's worked its way into a redesign of one of our views that we'll tell you about soon. So from what I've said, you could probably anticipate these goals. We, of course, wanted to develop these learning analytics-based visualization for our students. We wanted to focus on providing information that promotes students' metacognitive skills, which certainly ties well into this idea of improving learning effectiveness. In doing so, we wanted to help students reflect on what they're doing and plan and modify behaviors that they can do differently that may change the outcomes for them. And last, we had this goal very much in our partnership with being a member of the Unizin consortium, that the aim was to really leverage the data platform, and with the idea of developing something that any school that Unizin is a Unizin partner could also take up the dashboard. We developed a number of guidelines early on. We knew we had to set some specific parameters around our project. So there's 6 design goals here. Some I've already mentioned in terms of the theory underlying it. We wanted to give students more agency, so we were not looking for a one-size-fits-all. We were looking for ways that we could allow students to customize what they saw. We wanted to support social comparison in a more positive way. We also, with the input from our data viz person, wanted to make sure that our visualizations were simple and consistent, and what colors were used, what images were used on one view were systematic across the view, so students didn't have to relearn each time they looked at a different view. How do I interpret this one? We also, of course, had student privacy at the top of our list of things to think about. And in the case of MyLA, we tell students the instructor doesn't have access to this data at the individual student level. So the advisor or the instructor can't look at the dashboard for any particular student and see what the students are seeing. And finally, of course, and consistent with our aim for both being a good Unizin partner, we wanted it to be able to scale and be easily adopted. So where we are today, in total, MyLA's been used in over 60 courses. We've exposed more than 4,000 students to it. And in the current term, we have an amazing 32 courses using it. 10 of those are kind of orientation courses, so they're not traditional courses. But we have 4 full semesters of data. Some are pre-COVID and some are post-COVID. So of course, one of the things we're going to be looking at are there behavioral differences in uptake of the of MyLA and how students are using it once we went to a fully remote teaching. We also did have survey data. So we send a fairly comprehensive survey to the students at the end of the term. It's out right now. I sent it out yesterday. I've got 89 respondents so far. And in this instrument, we not only ask them about their use of the tool, but we've also embedded some instruments from the literature on self-regulated learning and motivation to try to map on what some characteristics of students that may be making it more or less likely they'll use a tool like this, or more or less likely that they'll be effective in using a tool like this. So we have both qualitative and quantitative data, because of course we also have all the click data. So where we are today, we're excited that there are 5 other schools who are piloting, rolling it out. Florida has got 22 courses, almost as many as we've had. And you can see Oregon State, 7,329 users. Now, I will note here, as we've found, when we talk about users, that's really the total on the course roster. So you add up how many students are in every course that MyLA is turned on. That doesn't mean that they're necessarily users. In fact, I think our data shows that about half the students in each class will touch it at least once. For us, we've noted that part of the major reason for this seems to be that it's so new, they either forget it's there, they don't notice it's there, they didn't pay attention to the demo. And so we've been really working this year on finding more ways to communicate about its availability and basically remind instructors and students to remember to use it. Okay, this is where I turn it over to Jennifer, who's going to show you what it's all about.
All right, so I'm going to jump us into Canvas. MyLA lives within Canvas. It is an LTI tool, so it's launched from within Canvas. It's added to a Canvas course, and students access it within Canvas. So that was one of our goals as we were creating MyLA, is we didn't want it to be yet another system that students have to remember is out there and go somewhere else to get to it. So we've made it very easy for students or for instructors to add MyLA to their courses. So instructors do have to turn it on. That's an optional tool in Canvas. And then they can determine which of the visualizations they want to use. And so it's very easy. Right now I'm in my Welcome to Social Psychology course. So this is my Psych 123B sample demo course. And here is a teacher. And so it's very easy to add to a course from the course navigation by simply going down and picking My Learning Analytics off the list. We've enabled it across our entire account, so it's available on every single course at the University of Michigan in Canvas. I'm going to add it. I like to put it under the grades tool. I always recommend that to instructors because students tend to go to the grades tool, and so they'll sometimes see that it's now here in the navigation. And so it's simply they add it to the navigation in the course, and then once the instructor goes and clicks it once, it tells MyLA, hey, this course is going to use MyLA, and then it'll take about 24 hours or until the next data load for the data to be processed. And so the next day, the instructor comes in and verifies which visualizations they want the students to use. By default, MyLA will turn all of them on. But as we start looking at the visualizations, you may see some that you would wonder, well, does it really fit with my course? And so we give instructors the ability to turn the visualizations on and off for their course as they see fit. So that's the instructor's view, and the instructor can see the visualizations, but as Stephanie mentioned, they can't see what the students are doing and what the students are accessing in MyLA, but they can see the basic visualization, so they know what their students are seeing. So I'm going to jump us over to another browser here, where I am logged in as student C in my Psych 123 test course. And so as you can see in my Canvas course here as a student, I've got My Learning Analytics on the left-hand navigation. And when I click it, this is what a student sees when they come into My Learning Analytics in their Canvas course. And in this course, you can see that the instructor has turned on all 3 of the different visualizations. So our resources accessed, assignment planning, and grade distribution. And for the sake of our demo, I'm actually going to jump us out into MyLA by itself because we had a little more screen real estate. So for the sake of the conference here, that's why I'm doing that. But normally the student would access all of this from right within their Canvas course. So I'm going to just start taking us through the visualizations. Again, if you have questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. So the first one we're going to start with here is our resources access visualization. And so when I click on that, what the student is seeing as they orient to the screen is a timeline at the top that covers all of the weeks of the course. The types of resources that are included in the visualization is right underneath that. And then the main part of the screen is this bar chart that's showing them a list of all of the files or videos, so all of the resources in the course that have been accessed by students within this week 14 to week 16. So the visualization always automatically drops them into the timeline between today and 2 weeks ago. So what they're seeing is the most recently accessed resources in this course. They can change the timeline. So maybe now, especially as I'm at the end of the term, I want to go back and see, okay, what were the most popular resources across the entire course because I need to study for my finals. And so then they can move the end of the timeline and the visualization will adjust to show the resources that were accessed most by students during the entire term. I'm going to pop us back to the last 2 weeks here. And so there we go as it readjusts. So what we're seeing is the percentage of students in the course that have accessed each one of these resources. So the one of the top, the most accessed resource in the list, our Helping and Altruism PDF, was accessed by 69% of the students within the last 2 weeks. And I can see that it's blue, so I know that I've accessed this resource. So if I mouse over it, I can see that I've accessed it 7 times. And then the gray ones are the ones that I haven't accessed. And so this is where we start giving students some information that may become actionable to them. So for example, 31% of the students in the class have accessed the social affect PDF. But when I mouse over it, I can see you haven't accessed it. It's gray, so I know I haven't accessed it. And then what I can do from right here within MyLA is click on it. Each one of these resources is actually a link, and I can pop it right open. So I don't have to go back and find it where else it is in my Canvas course. I can just open it right from MyLA. So that gives them some ability to actually take some action. Now, we also talked a little bit about giving students the ability to customize what they're seeing in the view. And so the timeline is one way that they can look at. Maybe before they're studying the midterm, they want to see, more than 2 weeks, or like I said, at the final, they want to see what people have been looking at for the entirety of the term to make sure they didn't miss anything. But they can also have the option to identify which students they want to include in this visualization. So do I want to include all the students in this visualization at the bottom? Or do I only want to see what students who are getting 90 to 100% in the class are getting or have been looking at? And so if I change that, the visualization changes and I can see, okay, these are what students who are getting 90 to 100% of the class, this is what they're looking at. And maybe that's the comparison I want to make for myself. That's the one I care about. And if I know that I always care about that, I can make that my default setting. So now every time I come in, it'll automatically default to show me the folks who are getting 90 to 100%. Those are the ones I really always want to look at. The other option that I can look at is, say I know I'm great at videos, but maybe I don't keep up with all the files. And so I can change the visualization, say, you know what, I don't really care about what videos I have or haven't seen. I just want to look at the files. And I can uncheck that. And now the visualization changes and shows me only the files that I haven't looked at. And these are files within your Canvas course. And the videos, in our case, these are videos within the Canvas course. They're Kaltura videos, locally branded. There are My Video videos. So we're getting data from Kaltura, live events from Kaltura, and live events from the Canvas events that are feeding this visualization. And then the other thing to note about this visualization is they do have this brush tool on the right side where they can see more files than the default view. Because one of the things we have noticed is that there are some courses that have many, 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 many files. And so it really helps to have this kind of brush tool where you can focus down on just the amount of files that they're interested in. In fact, they can make it smaller even if they need to, depending on how many files are in the course. So that is our resources access. Stephanie, is there anything that I'm missing on this one?
Well, you demonstrated the 90 to 100, but maybe if you hover over the drop down, you'll see there's 3 categories, because and we don't go lower than 70 to 79, but students know whether they're really aiming for an A in the course, which is then they might want to pick this 90 to 100. But we also know there are classes that students take, they're like, I just need a B. Just give me a B. I really have to work harder in my other classes. So I just need to make sure I'm keeping up with the students who currently are aiming for a B as well. And then I guess we have the ones for the slackers in the 70s to 79%, which I don't imagine we see much use of at Michigan, but that's like, could just be like for those seniors who's got that last elective class, they just have to pass it to graduate. So that gives students some more options. Thanks, Jen.
All right, if there's no questions on this one, I'll jump us over to our next visualization. And that is our assignment planning. We hit it one more time. Oh, live demos. There we go. All right, so assignment planning. So what this view is providing students information is about the assignments in their course. So we had the first one is about the resources, the files and the videos. The next one is about the assignments that they're expected to turn in for the course. And so there's kind of two major parts of this visualization, this part at the top with the grade progress bar. And so what that is showing them is what their current grade is on the assignments that have been submitted so far, and then their maximum possible grade if they get all of the points possible on all of the remaining assignments. And so that gives them a sense of where their score is currently. So not really their grade, but really their score, their percentage. And they also have the option to set a goal for the course. And so this is a new version of assignment planning. This is our second version. It actually came about in part from feedback from students who wanted to know a little bit more about how they're doing. But it also gives them a chance, again, we're increasing the interactivity with this visualization more so than they had in the original version, which just showed them the progress bar and then the assignments down below that and when they're due. And so before I put a goal in, I want to talk a little bit about what's happening at the bottom of the screen, so that then they don't have to set a goal. They are welcome to use this visualization without any sort of goal setting. And so if they scroll to the bottom of the screen, what they're seeing is assignments by due date. And so it always centers on the current week. So week 16 is the week that we are currently in. And so I can see what's due this week. I can look ahead and see what's due in upcoming weeks. In this case, as we're at the end of the term, there's not a lot due in the next couple of weeks, but they are pretty significant. I got a final coming up that's worth 25% of my grade, I can see here. And so what it's showing them is the week that we're in, what the due date is, what type. And in this case, this is what assignment group in Canvas has been set up. So I've set up a homework group. I've set up an exam and quizzes group in my sample course, the name of the assignment, and then what percent of my grade is this assignment going to impact, and what score do I have if it's been graded, and then the status of it, and this little lock goal column. We'll talk a little bit about goals now. So while this gives them a sense of what's going on in the entirety of the course in terms of all the assignments, and you can see that there's not a lot of graded assignments in this course because I, as a teacher, have been very lax in getting my grading done. But when they are graded, you can see what my score is. And so if you've also got a goal there, you can see whether or not you met your goal. And then everything in orange is everything I've submitted. Because one of the things that we heard from students was it would be really great to see not just what's graded and what's not graded, but could you just reassure me that I've submitted it? Is there a way to tell that I've actually submitted this assignment? And so the ones in orange are the ones that have been submitted. So the goal setting aspect of this particular visualization, I can set a minimum goal in percentages. So what would be happy if I at least get this goal? So let's say, I'm looking at where I am now, I'm at an 88.9. I could possibly get a 98, but you know what I really need is I just need to hit a 90 in this course. That's what I want for this course. Or maybe all I really need to hit is an 85 and I'm ahead of where I need to be right now. And so I can set and reset these goals to whatever I need them to be. What's meaningful for me? What do I actually want to achieve in this course? And then when I set my course goal at the top, what happens down below is for every assignment that hasn't been graded yet, the system automatically calculates and kind of prorates across all of the assignments what would be the minimum goal I would need to get on that assignment in order to meet my course goal. And students can leave it at that and know that, okay, I've got upcoming assignments. I need to know, I know I need at least need to hit a 16.8 on my class participation discussion. But maybe I also know I'm great at discussions. Discussion boards, that's my thing. And so I know I'm going to get 20 points. And so students can actually then start playing around a little bit with the numbers and see, knowing that I'm going to always get 20 points on discussions, I can enter that here. And then the system will lock that goal for me. So you see the little checkbox with a lock goal because I've set it as the student. So the system knows, don't change that. That's what the student wants. But it will go ahead and recalculate all the remaining grades to make sure that they add up to my course grade. So I can continue to play with that to whatever level of detail I want as a student. I can continue to go through and do all of my discussions and change those and see, okay, great, I get a 21 on that. Then I only have to get a 41 on my homework now. That's great. I know that's what works for me. Or maybe I know I'm terrible at discussions. And so I want to test out what happens if I know I'm only going to get half the points on discussions. So it really gives them a chance to think about, okay, what are the assignments? How do I expect that I will do, or how do I want to do on those assignments? And then after things are graded, they can come back and look and say, did I meet that goal or did I not meet that goal? And so the system gives them more information as they mouse over the actual assignments themselves. So I can see now as I mouse over my internet's influence discussion, I can see I didn't set a goal for this one, but I can see the points possible were 50. I got a 43, but the class average was 37.8. So maybe that's good and that's helpful to know. And then if there are rules like this assignment, the lowest grade gets dropped, that those rules would be indicated here as well. In this case, there's no rules for this assignment. So that was also some of the information here was also based on feedback that we got from students. The class average was something that they were very concerned about. So they wanted, in their original version of assignment planning, we told them what the points possible was and what they earned. But we got feedback that said, hey, what would be really useful and meaningful to me is also to know what the class average was so that I can see where I stand in comparison on any given assignment. And so the only other aspect of this visualization that gives them a little bit of maneuverability is to do some of the filtering. So for example, if they only want to see homework, they can filter and say, okay, I only care about homework. And so the list down below, and this becomes really handy for classes that have a lot of assignments in them. Maybe every attendance is an assignment. And so that becomes a lot to look at. And so having these kind of filters is really helpful. Or maybe what I really only care about is, okay, what haven't I submitted yet? Those are the ones I want to look at. And I can see those in the visualization. I'm gonna go ahead and clear the filters. And so this is our most complex visualization in terms of what students can do and the interactivity that they have with our visualizations. So Stephanie, are there any questions about this or anything else we want to add to this one?
No questions so far in the chat, but I will say that, yes, we rolled this out for the first time this winter term. And so our survey, we had to change our survey a little bit to get student feedback on this. And we'll certainly be paying attention to the questions about usability to see whether they, understood how to use this well or not. And maybe we have to revise the demo or not. But again, it's not just the idea of giving students control, it's also the idea of acknowledging that students are strategic, right? Because instructors and a lot of learning analytics research looks at a single course at a time. But we know that students take more than one course in a semester, and they're often making trade-offs, and they're having to decide, how do I focus my energy? What do I need to worry about? What do I need to do this week? And so that is part of the point here. Now there is a couple questions, and one I'll ask right now because it's related to this specific view. Jennifer, how is the goal affected if an instructor changes the grading scheme mid-semester or other assignment category changes?
So we're picking up the data on a daily basis from Canvas. And so as that data changes, then this visualization would change with changes to that data. So if this instructor does make a change in the assignments or the assignment weighting or the assignment groups, then that would be reflected in this visualization. Now, one of the things that we try to emphasize for students when we do our video and intro video and our documentation is you and your instructor know better than the system, because we are only able to get the assignments and grade information that's in Canvas. And so if there's a grading scheme that is actually taking place outside of Canvas, and we've seen this happen with other courses, then this is not necessarily going to exactly reflect what a student's current grade is if instructors are using some kind of weighting or mechanism that involves spreadsheets and things outside of Canvas. So we do encourage students to be in communication with their instructors if they have questions about scores.
Right. And as you saw at one point when Jennifer hovered over to, if there's a rule in the grade book, like you get to drop one of these 5 grades, then when the student hovers over it and it shows this is how many % of points you got, here's the average, the rule also will say you get to drop one of these. Greg has asked whether the student gets notified of the change grading scheme. That is completely up to the instructor. That's not anything that we can control, and really it wasn't in our design guidelines, but we always knew that for this to be successful, the system to be successful at scale, we couldn't rely on instructors changing their practices to be able to use it. So I would hope that an instructor would communicate to students when they're changing things. But that's a hope, right? Okay, let's go to the last one, Jennifer.
Okay.
And then we have some more questions coming in, and we can take we have time. We'll have time for questions afterward, and we can go back through some of these.
Okay, so our last visualization is our simplest visualization. It's a histogram. It's also the visualization that students use the most and gets asked about the most, and that instructors are most reluctant to use. So there's a lot of interest around this particular visualization. And in this class, I only have 13 students in my test class, and so that's not a lot of students to work with. I do have a slide that I can show you an image of a class that's got more like 90 students in it, but this does give you the sense of what this visualization does. So it's a very simple histogram that shows what is the average grade in the class, as well as what is the median grade, the class size, and then where does my grade fall. And so one of the things that we've done for student privacy is that we've also done some binning of the grades at the low end of the scale. So for example, for my student C here, I'm getting an 89.9 in the class, and I just fall in this bucket of everybody under 92%. So if the other people who are in this bucket, they may be down at 30%, they may be at 50%, they may be at 92%, but I can't tell exactly how many students and where exactly they fall. The other thing I can do on this particular visualization, and again, this was feedback from students who are like, I'm really interested in the grade distribution. I want to see the shape of the histogram, but I don't want to see where my grade is. That's not helpful to me. It makes me kind of stressed out. And so students do have the option to uncheck show my grade, and they can just keep an eye on what is the shape of the distribution. And this is something that's useful for students after big exams or after big assignments. They can come in and look at the grade distribution and see how it's shifted. So if I know how I did on an assignment or an exam, I might feel like, okay, maybe I didn't do great, but then I come into the grade distribution and I see that it's shifted for everybody and the entire distribution has moved down a little bit. Or maybe I did great and the entire distribution moved up a little bit. Or maybe I did great or not great and the distribution didn't change. But it gives me, again, that sense of what's happening overall, especially as we're online and students aren't talking to each other about how they did on exams and what people thought, that sometimes it gives them a better sense of control and what's going on just by having the information of looking at the grade distribution. And this, like I said, is one of the more controversial distributions. And honestly, in a class of 13, I probably wouldn't turn it on. It's pretty small just for student privacy purposes, but for the sake of the demo and the sake of my test class, that's all the students that I have in that particular test class. But it is something that instructors do have to think about, and some of them are resistant to it and some of them are open to it. It really just depends on what their theory of teaching is and how they feel about this particular visualization, and they have control over that. They get to decide whether or not to use the grade distribution. So questions or?
Well, there are some other questions. One thing I want to note on here that's consistent, although the word grade appears on this visualization and in a couple of the other ones, you'll notice there are no grades on here. We stick with percentage of points. And this again goes back to some of the theoretical orientation for the design, which we want students to focus on mastery of content and not necessarily on performance. Because in the theory of achievement goal orientation, students who have a mastery orientation, in other words, their motivation for learning is to, because they're interested in the material, they want to know all about it, versus I want to get an A. So we try to take the focus away from a grade. Many of these grade distributions and other people's products will color code them. These are the A's, these are the A minuses. We decided specifically not to do that. And the other upside of that is instructors decide how to grade very differently. Some will tell students right up front on the syllabus, this is what it takes to get an A, this is what it takes to get a B. Others will still grade on the curve, which won't be determined till the end of the course. So we didn't want to be giving students information telling them what their grade was going to be, because if that wasn't what their grade turns out to be, that, because of something the instructor had decided, we didn't want to be in that position. Now, Alexandra asked, does the instructor get to see some of the grade distribution? For instance, if a student has questions about what their standing in the class is based on the grade relative to the grade distribution, can the instructor see the particular part? Now, they can't see the student's view, but Jennifer, they can see the overall view, correct?
Right. So the instructor view would essentially look like this. It just wouldn't have their grade. It would tell them there's no grade for you in this course, because as the instructor, they wouldn't have a grade. So they would just see the distribution.
And that's similar for the resources access. An instructor can go and say, what % of students in my class have opened this thing that I want 100% of them to read? And they can keep track of that. And to know, even by the time the class is over, who read what and what were things that I put in that resources folder truly useful to students, or, very few students read them and still a lot of my students got good grades. Let's see, are there, some of these are really good questions for, yes, are instructors able to turn off the visualizations at various points in the term? For example, could a professor turn on the grade distribution later in the term when there are more grades contributing to it?
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, that would be a great way, I think, to use MyLA. And so maybe it makes sense to turn resources accessed on right from the beginning, because you want students to start reading and interacting with the resources in the course. Because if one of the things that we've found or we've talked about is that if you turn it on day one, there's really not any data in those visualizations for students to look at, especially if you don't have all your assignments set up. There's not going to be any grade data in the grade distribution. And so the first time the students go there, there's no data. They might be less inclined to go look again later. So it can make a lot of sense to be strategic about when you turn which visualizations on. So yeah, it's a great question.
The caveat to that, though, is if an instructor turns some of these tools on too late, the students already got their habits down. They've already figured out how to deal with the course, and throwing a new tool at them at that point in time, they may simply not use it because they don't feel like they need it, because they haven't needed it so far. So it is something that we'll be able to look at starting with our last term's data in the fall, when instructors were the ones turning it on. We, in a prior terms, we turned it on for them on request, and we had fairly standard start dates or fairly consistent start dates. We didn't really encourage instructors to turn it on till week 4 or 5. So we may look at data now where the instructors turned it on much earlier and see, do we get a higher percentage of use when it's available earlier or not? So there's a lot of questions about this timing stuff that we can start to poke at more as the term goes on. the instructor could always use the student view in Canvas to see what the students see. Yes, but not the individual student. No.
No, it actually does not work that way because the LTI is launched with the identity of the person, and MyLA is looking at who is your identity. And so the student view has a test student identity that's not going to be in MyLA. So the student view doesn't actually work in MyLA. So the instructor would just go in as themselves. So instead of having to use the student view, they would just go in as themselves and see it at an aggregate level. So again, you wouldn't see an individual student's view.
Right. So let's exit the demo and give people a little bit more information, and then we can tackle some of these other questions that people have put in the chat, and that will give you a chance to review them, Jennifer, while I talk about these, right? So so here's a question: why would I turn it on? Why do I want to do this? And the first one is easy, because there isn't any other analytics for students if you're a Canvas using school. And the other reason, I think, especially these last couple terms where everyone's been online, is can it help students track what they're doing? Can it help the students who are struggling? I know students have talked about how Canvas has just become a black box for them during remote learning, where they just, turn stuff in and throw it at the black box and wait until they get a grade report back. So this really helps them think about, am I doing what I need to do? Am I keeping up with the workload? Am I keeping up with the students who are like me and have the same goals as me? And the other thing about MyLA is, as I said earlier, instructors can turn it on, and we have some best practices hints, but they don't have to change how they structure their course or how they do their teaching to make MyLA useful. Now, there are certain kinds of courses it really doesn't work well with. We have a system on our campus that some other schools are using called GradeCraft, which is a kind of gameful learning where students can really have a lot of agency over what assignments they do and the points they earn and so forth. If there's that kind of thing, or the instructor is grading outside of the Canvas gradebook, there's certain kinds of things that really does make it difficult or impossible for them to use MyLA, but those are pretty much edge cases on our campus at this point in time. Next slide. So as we said, do you want to know, well, if I turn it on, do students use it? And as you'll see, I mentioned earlier that about half the students will at least go poke at it. And this is before we did those 3 terms there, were before we really had a concerted effort to remind students it was there. I think some of our early strategy was, well, let's just turn it on. If we build it, will they come? Kind of thing. But then with so much consistent feedback on the student survey, when we asked the students who didn't use it why they didn't use it, when the answers were almost exclusively, I forgot about it, or I didn't know it was there, it really challenged us to think about, okay, so it's not that they don't want to use it or think it's stupid. So I'm really interested in our data from this past term and the winter term, where we've tried to be send out more reminders about it being there. So we'll see if the percent of users goes up. Those 3 views we showed you, as Jennifer told you, everybody hits the grade distribution. If you were a MyLA user, you went to that, 80% of the students went to that, and to 91%. So, and that's consistent. All the research I've seen on other dashboards, if it has that grade distribution view, students just pound on it all the time. You can see things are a little different. The resources access one is higher than the assignment planning view. Now, again, this is the old assignment planning view. There wasn't anything very strategic about the old view. So the resources access, at least half the students who used it were going there as well to just look and see, am I keeping up? And then the assignment planning will look, especially I think from fall 20 to this current winter 21 term, when we've introduced the new view, are we getting more or less users during the online teaching with those tools? Okay. What do students say? I told you we did surveys. So we asked them about each of these views, how influential, how much did it help you study for exams and preparing for them? And how much do you think it improved your performance? And did you find it valuable? And so, it was a Likert scale. So some students didn't, a third of the students didn't find the assignment view to be at all useful. That's the old view. So again, we'll be looking for differences, but 2/3 of them found it slightly or even very and definitely useful. The resources view, you can see the numbers are a little bit higher in terms of it being both valuable and influential. And the grades view, everyone thinks that, most students think that helps them in some way and help them improve their performance. So in terms of usability, so the question about how easy was it to use, only less than 5% said that they were difficult or complex. And as we've seen, that they report changes from using it in how they study, whether they understood the course material, the way they plan their activity. So the other thing is, knowing that instructors had some anxiety about these views, particularly the grade view, we started asking students to rate whether seeing a view made them anxious or happy or hopeful. We had 4 different categories of affect. It's kind of a 2x2: positive affect, negative affect, low and high amounts. And you can see that most students didn't report experiencing more anxiety because of using MyLA, and the ones that did, that was mostly in the grade distribution view, if it was there, the assignment planning view, and then the resources access view. Remember, the assignment planning view shows them their progress so far, and they can see what the grades were, the average grade, and so forth. So there's some more performance indicators in that as well. So so that's what we found from that. And here's our team. So many people, such a thrill to be part of this group. And it's really been a great experience, both for me as a researcher, someone who's developed a tool, and just someone who really deeply cares about student success. I think we're on the right track here. So Jennifer, let's go to some of these questions. And I think you should start at the very top. Brandy asked about the technology powering the interface. I'm gonna let you take that one for sure.
Sure. So the technology is built on a Django framework, and then the visualizations are using D3 and React and HTML. So, and I'll be honest, that's about as much as I can speak to the technology. But I hope if you have questions, feel free to ping me, and I'm happy to put you in touch with some of the folks on our development team.
Yep. Someone else would like to know about the future. So are there this is Kate asks, are there other data targets you're hoping to include? It sounds like MyLA will only track readings and assignments that are loaded into Canvas. Another way I could ask this, are there other visualizations on your roadmap?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I know that we would love to continue to build out MyLA with other visualizations. I know the University of British Columbia has been interested in doing some discussions visualizing. We've had questions about doing visualizations of modules. So we are looking at potentially exploring some of those. We do have some infrastructure work that we need to do coming up in the immediate future as the Unizin data warehouse goes away, and we need to go entirely to the Unizin data platform. And so we do have some of that work more in the immediate roadmap, but we would like to continue to build out visualizations, and we're always very curious to see what other ideas folks have about what could be visualized.
Yeah, and one of our goals for giving this presentation is to invite you, if you have the resources on your campus, to help, like the British Columbia people helped us with that new assignment planning view. We can't do more than we've already done right now, and we have goals and other ideas, but we'd certainly welcome collaboration with other schools who might help with the coding and development of other future views. So please help us do that. Yeah, oh, somebody says, Pilar has said, I think Canvas may have changed this. Have you considered the new analytics student view? Is there a student view in new analytics? Isn't that just for instructors?
I haven't looked at it, so that's actually a link. Thank you for the useful link, and we will take a look at that.
Yep. Can you tell me why there are only a few courses using this tool? Patricia asks. Should it become a tool that students can install themselves to have more control over where they get access to it? That's a great idea. I love that idea. Why there are so few courses? Because we don't have a carrot or a stick to make instructors turn it on. We have, again, it's advertising. We've done so many faculty demos. We've run stories in our campus, the newspaper for faculty. I think in part, just as we've really started to get compelling data about it, COVID hit. Instructors, of course, were all of a sudden having to go online. And even coming back this fall, I think people have been very stretched about adapting their teaching anyway. And so saying, hey, do you want to turn this new tool on? Particularly when they may be feeling even more vulnerable regarding student ratings and their success as an instructor in a fully online setting. So I think there are a number of reasons, and I'm curious, other campuses that are starting to adopt this, that do other schools pick it up more quickly? I think there's been some discussion, at least I know in my own school, when I've showed this demo to my colleagues, the Associate Dean for Academic Affairs has said, shouldn't we just turn this on for all our classes? But again, we are not in a position to make our instructors, even in my own school, turn it on. So I think we just need to keep telling them the stories that we're learning about its value.
All right, and I think that with that question, it kind of takes us right to time. So thank you very, very much for spending your afternoon with us for an hour, and have a great time at the rest of the conference.
Yeah, thanks for the great questions.
Absolutely.
Bye-bye.